Hey everyone, welcome to the first episode of Meet the Team at Pearl Lemon, where I'm going around and interviewing a bunch of the people who work for Pearl Lemon to see what their roles are like, what it's like to be in this company, and to get to know the people behind Pearl Lemon, because we're not just cogs in a machine, we're people too. I'm your host, Noah Carey. I'm a content creator at Pearl Lemon, and my first ever guest is Rachael Brown. Rachael, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Noah. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for coming. Now, a lot of you might be wondering, well, why Rachael? Why would I pick her first? And to me, it was an obvious choice because she's actually a podcast host for Plant Sumo. Rachael, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, it's amazing. It's just like the teacher showing the student how it's done.
Yes, yes.
um,
That's why I'm like, yeah, like she knows exactly what to do. So I'm like, I got to get her on so I can like actually know what I'm doing.
no, no, genuinely, like in no way. Um, in terms of podcast and what I do, basically on my podcast, which is the Plant Sumo podcast, you can check it out on YouTube and Spotify and all these different kinds of platforms. I interview influential figures in the field of food, fitness, wellness, all that kind of stuff. And in particular, people who are in the sphere of plant based food, because we are a plant based meal prep and delivery company. So that's what I do. I have people on, we chat, maybe have a laugh, and I've had a really diverse selection of people on. Some people who have like made me laugh, some people who have like surprised me, some pretty intense people in terms of their beliefs and their perspectives, which was really cool to hear about. So yeah, that's what I do. I talk in front of a mic, which is great.
Oh, but it is so much more than that. There's so much that goes behind an episode. This, I don't know if you guys know this, but this is a very carefully crafted episode. It's not just talking. This is an art form. But in all seriousness, I've checked out some of Rachel's episodes of Plant Sumo podcast. There are 3 out right now that, to my knowledge, and like they're really fun to listen to. Like she keeps it very conversational. You can tell she's a great host. She's
Oh.
enthusiastic. Yeah, I'm just gonna keep the compliments going and talk you up more. I mean, you're just such a good host, and like you can just tell right away the ones I've listened to, the guests just feel so natural and just are able to talk to you, and it's very impressive. I can do half as good a job as you with this one. I'll consider the job well done.
I feel like this whole podcast is just gonna be us like complimenting each other back and forth. Like, no, you're the best podcast. Because
which which is fine. I mean, I want people to know at Pro Lemon, like we're all great podcast hosts and we're just great people.
yeah, like some of the people I've had on, I mean, obviously you've said, I've created this kind of like natural flowing conversation, but the people I've had on in particular, they've just like the amount they actually know about things like veganism and food and travel and stuff like that. It just helps the conversation flow so easily. I'd probably say one of my favorite of the 3 that I've done so far would be with the first people I had on, who are called the Vegan Voyagers, Erin and Hayden, and they're a couple. And basically, they travel all across, the world. That's their ultimate goal. And they were in Mexico by the time I actually did the podcast with them. And they just show you all the vegan options that are actually out there and challenge all those misconceptions about plant-based food and its accessibility and how delicious it is and who likes plant-based food. So yeah, I think obviously, kind of an obvious point to make, but the key to a great podcast isn't just being a great host. There's only so far you can carry a show with that. It is about having people on who have these interesting and unique experiences and actually know how to articulate them in the right way. So, no, if it doesn't, if it sometimes doesn't go your way, it's not your fault. You're amazing. Keep that in mind.
Oh yes, keep the compliments coming. And also what I'm hearing too is that it's about the guest. And I feel like you're just talking yourself up because it's like, oh, it's about the guest too, and they have to be great. And like today you're the guest, and you're just like, this podcast is gonna be
Oh my
great
God.
because I'm such a good guest.
I didn't mean to do that. Like, it wasn't intentional just to like gas myself up. But I'm here. We're talking about me, my experience, and what else can you do?
Yeah,
Got to be
well,
confident.
we are talking about you, and you seem to be all right. Enough gassing up. Now let's bring you down a little bit because
Oh God.
I have a surprising fact to the listeners may find interesting. You're the host of a plant-based podcast. Is that
Oh
correct?
no.
Yeah, you know where this is going, don't you?
Yeah, I do
Uh,
actually.
Plant
Kind of.
Sumo is a plant-based. The company is a plant-based food delivery service. For those who don't know, I mean, it's kind of like Uber Eats or DoorDash, but it's a very plant-based focused in London. But Rachel, is it true that you eat meat?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Okay.
Yes, I do. You've exposed me. Take me
Yes.
to the vegan jail. Just lock me
Well,
up.
I hope your podcast doesn't get canceled now.
It will do. I'm about to be destroyed on Twitter by the 5 people who watch it. um, yeah, I mean, for me, the idea of actually moving into living a plant-based lifestyle is something I find incredibly appealing, and I'm really passionate about the whole concept and actually making that kind of choice, right, and moving into it. But it's kind of like I'm not at that place yet in my life because I don't feel like I have the education and the knowledge and the skills to kind of structure that diet properly for myself. Because I think I've said before, maybe because we've also had like a trial run for my show as well, that I have been vegetarian. Part of why I struggled so much with that diet is because I did it entirely for moral reasons, personal reasons. I didn't actually plan what I was going to do. I didn't actually have some established meals that I enjoyed and I was going to eat throughout the week. I was just like, no more meat. And then it kind of all fell apart naturally. So the thing is with moving to a plant-based diet is that I wanted this podcast not just to be a way for, me to introduce you to all these sorts of people and their wisdom and their experiences, but also for you to see my journey, I guess, as
Ah,
I
yes, your
hopefully, yeah,
journey.
exactly.
So it really should be called the Plant Sumo Podcast, Rachel's Journey to Veganism. Is that the real official title?
I mean, maybe it should be. That sounds very spiritual if you put it that way.
Yeah. And at the end, you can give little updates like, guys, new update. I only ate meat once this week. I feel great.
Become like a full on YouTuber.
Oh
I just
yeah.
launch my career off of that. No.
Yeah. But in all seriousness though, like that could be a really cool angle to like go with it. Like, yes, you're interviewing these people who are on plant-based or vegan diets and like how they're doing it. But like, yeah, you can also show the process of what it's like to do that, like the educational process, and like people can maybe see yourself go through. I think that could actually be a super educational and a good resource for people who aren't sure about, who like want to, but aren't sure about how to go about it. And also it's an entertaining way too to learn about it instead of just reading these science journals about, glycogen or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as well, on a lot of social media platforms with the vegan community, there is very much this sort of image of perfection, right? Of these people who like they eat perfectly clean and they have perfectly body they have perfect bodies
Yes.
and they live a plant-based lifestyle and they never slip up and make any sort of mistakes and stuff like that, right? Or they never go back to eating meat or kind of transition in and out of it. And I think having a sort of YouTube kind of persona, because I know if I went on a plant-based diet, I like cheese too much not to mess up at least once. Like I live for cheese. It's
Oh, it's
amazing.
so good though. It's so
Yeah.
good.
I mean, I think we said on the first trial run we did, it's drugs because it is. It's literally a drug. It's addictive.
Pretty much,
And
yeah.
yeah, and as well, we have been considering alongside the podcast me doing vlog things where I kind of go around London to vegan like restaurants and stuff like that, and I actually try out some of the food, and you could kind of see the journey through that. So that's something which is interesting we could explore. And I have written like blog content and articles which are based off actually going to some local restaurants in London which are vegan. So it's already sort of begun in a way, which is cool.
Your journey's already started. Yes.
Oh god. I just already feel myself becoming a new woman. Like
Wow, this is getting very externally spiritual here.
yeah.
Um, so you're trying to go through this educational process too. I'm wondering too if, and you also talked about the perfection aspect and how like that's
Mm.
kind of the stereotype with it. Are you also through this at all considering the negative stereotypes behind not just plant-based but especially like veganism, and how like at least in the United States I can say that there is sometimes you hear the word vegan, there is a reaction like, oh, vegan, like how can you not eat meat? Where are you gonna get your protein and like all that? Is that at all brought up in your podcast, or is that something you're considering, that negative stereotype with it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, something that we've considered in kind of every step of creating the business is the fact that people have this perception of vegans as very ideologically pushy, like people
Yeah.
who consume plant-based food, where obviously there's nothing wrong being proud about your moral and ethical choices and the way you choose to live your life. But, there's that difficulty of people being made to feel as if they're being like attacked, right, for living in a way that for them has always been perfectly normal. It's fine. Sorry, my sister's just picked something in the microwave and she's like panicking. But
Oh
yeah, it's
no.
fine.
Oh, not a microwave panic.
No. Yeah, as I was saying, and there's that whole sort of idea that there always has to be a kind of ideological angle that comes first to plant-based food, and I don't think that's true. It's for everyone. It isn't exclusive. You don't have to be on a specific journey or living a specific lifestyle to enjoy that kind of food. So in a way, we kind of wanted to move away from these whole labels of vegan and veganism itself, because we wanted this food to be accessible for absolutely everyone, no matter what they believe in or how they live. And on top of that, yeah, like you said with protein, there's so many misconceptions, just so many that, if you are vegan, you can't get an adequate amount of protein, and that isn't true. If you're educated on the sources of protein, things like legumes, beans, seitan, tofu, all these kinds of stuff, you've got very like natural sources, you've got more processed sources like meat substitutes, stuff like that. There's literally so many options out there, and a lot of the people I've interviewed are vegan bodybuilders or they're athletes. So these are guys who are like pretty buff.
Yeah.
They're like ripped. So I think you can get enough protein somehow.
Yeah, I think part of it too, I'm speaking more of a from this perspective of the United States,
Mm.
because we're definitely a state that values our meat
Oh
and
yeah.
whatnot, to say the least. And yeah, I think there is that conception here too, or misconception. I think part of that too is I don't think people realize how easy it is to actually get protein from things that
Yeah.
aren't meat. Like you were saying, I also don't think people realize one, how much protein you need in a day. It's like an absurd amount,
Mm.
especially if you aren't working out like crazy. Like if you're doing very minimal exercise, you don't need a ton of protein. You don't need like 300 grams,
Yeah, exactly.
and also in one sitting. I mean, I'm not a scientist, I'm not an expert, so I'm not going to give you exact numbers because I don't want people to quote me like, Noah Carey of Pearl Lemon said that we only need X amount of protein grams. But it's like,
I'm sorry, we're actually going to put a quote on our site now. You've
oh yeah, that's fine. That's
you've
fine.
said it. We're like nutritionist and expert Noah Carey, which is
I'll add that to the resume.
yeah.
But But yeah, like you only need so much in one sitting too. There's only so much your body can handle, and in like a full, I mean, the ideal portion size of meat is the deck of cards. Like that's kind of like the go-to, like that size. But
Yeah.
people will have like two burgers as the main thing of their meal, and it's like you're getting way more protein than you need at once, and you're probably just storing it as fat and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, you
Yeah.
can you can get it in other places, but two, you don't need as much protein as you think.
Mm.
And as she takes a sip from her Plant Sumo mug, nice little
Oh God, I
placement
didn't
there.
think you would notice. Just a little plug moment, like
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's really true. I think especially in the US, like there are definitely certain states in particular I can think of. There is a very strong culture around, having meat be the kind of center of your meals and what you're eating and stuff like that. I mean, I'm saying this as a Brit, so let me know if I'm wrong or just
No, you're right. Yeah. That's not even
yeah.
just certain states. I think in general in America, the idea is, when you think of a meal, the first things are meat, carbs, like,
Mm.
steak, potatoes, burger, french fries, like vegetables and fruit and all that stuff is very much on a back burner when it compared it's like the side when it should be like the main portion, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
My expert nutritionalist going to be quoted on Plant Sumo opinion.
Yeah, exactly. Like not like a massive, piece of meat. I mean, obviously that's not always massive, but you get what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true what you were saying with people having this sort of expectation because of the culture around meat and around food and consumption that they need more meat than they actually do, I mean, again, so many people don't seem to realize that your diet is such an individualized thing, right? And you have to
Yeah.
take into account everything, not even just, you know, what you necessarily want from a diet and like your levels of health, but like you said, your lifestyle, how much exercise you're doing, like what fitness you're specifically into, you know, whether you actually need that amount of protein, and also your brain, you know, how is the food that you're eating feeding, you know, your brain, keeping you healthy, keeping you hormonally and sort of holistically well and stuff like that. And I think a plant-based diet in so many ways is significantly more healthy for you than high levels of consumption of meat. And I'm not saying this to be like everyone should automatically live a plant-based lifestyle, because that is just not possible for some people in some specific cases, and people should make their own independent choices about their diet. I think it's such a personal thing, not even just because, you know, it's private business, but what we eat was like is so often attached to quite a lot of personal emotions and experiences and intimate things which have happened to us throughout our lives. And I don't think anyone has the right to like point the finger at anyone and be like, I think you should be doing this with your diet. I mean, I think you can give advice and advise people, but there's no need to attack. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, 100% agree with that. And yeah, everyone's different. And sometimes, look, meat tastes good. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
blame you for eating 3 burgers. Like, it tastes delicious, all right? And my point earlier in saying how that's wrong, it's like, I mean, maybe I shouldn't be telling, again, like I'm not telling people like what's right or wrong. It's just that I think that education-wise, like we're more conditioned in the United States to eat, meat and carbs and stuff like that, where my opinion is that the healthiest option, especially in terms of exercise to and athleticism, like to have not necessarily like no meat, but I just think like, yeah, like making sure you have vegetables and all that too. And like for some people, like adding that side of broccoli could be a huge step for them, and that's like that's
Mm.
awesome. And for some people, it is just eliminating meat completely. And I think the thing too, I mean, it's plant based. That doesn't mean necessarily no meat ever. Like I consider myself to be more on a plant based diet, and I still eat meat.
Yeah.
It's just not. I don't do it every day. I usually don't have meat more than once a day, unless it's some special occasion or something, or if I just have a lot of extra leftover, whatever.
Mm.
I'm just like, you know what, I could go for another burger. I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, there's different. Yeah, it's a spectrum if you want to call it that. There's varying degrees of how much meat are in people's lives. So
Yeah. I
everyone's
like
different.
the term spectrum. That's
Yes,
very like
the
no.
meat spectrum, or is it
Yeah.
the vegan spectrum? It's
Yeah.
plant-based spectrum. We'll figure it out. We'll get back to you guys.
We'll let you know on that. We'll give
Yeah,
you an
we'll have a
update.
longer, in-depth discussion on our Spectrum podcast about uh, what we're gonna call this meat to plant ratio spectrum. Actually, that was pretty good. That was a pretty good title.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, we might even get to colors at one point. So
Yeah.
you should stay tuned in.
Yes,
Um,
definitely.
yeah, I mean, what you were saying in particular there about something being, you know, like for some person, you know, having adding more broccoli to what they eat is nothing, right? But for someone else, like you said, it's such a huge step towards changing their diet relative to them and what they've gone through. And I think as well, as someone who has had issues like in my past with things like disordered eating and stuff like that, and not eating in a way that was necessarily healthy for me and looking after my own body, that having this attitude of kind of inclusivity about health and wellness and diet is something that not only drew me to this brand, but also is something that I think is really, really important to adequately support everyone. Because, you know, people talk about, you know, weight and health in such a toxic way in our culture, right? And there's so much judgment which is laced into all of it, but you really can't necessarily know the other factors in a person's life which are impacting the dietary choices every single day, you know. And
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
A bit of
because
a tangent there,
yeah,
heavy
no,
stuff, but
totally relevant. But yeah, just even to add on to that, yeah, I agree. Like you never know in terms of economic status and like psychological and just like mentally what they're going through. Like everyone's
yeah,
different, and it's not everyone's just like, oh, screw this. I want to be, whatever. It's like people are going through different things, so it's hard to just like look at somebody and say, or I wouldn't say it's hard. It's easy to do, but it's not the right thing to do. Just look at somebody and judge, like, oh, they don't care. They're a bad
mm,
person by the way they look, whatever. Which isn't anything new, but I think sometimes we can all feel like find ourselves guilty of doing that, either subconsciously or whatnot. But yeah, so we've talked a lot about Plant Sumo and your time there. being a podcast host and all that, but I want to get to know Rachel now as the
Oh
person,
god.
not Plant Sumo Rachel, but I want to get to know Rachel. So we'll start. Let's start with this. What is one thing that you think everyone needs?
Oh
I know I'm
god.
putting you on the spot.
I mean, I feel like I'm a bit of an oversharer in general. So
You can do 5 things. I don't care. I just want to do one thing to make it easy. But like, if you have 5 and you're ready to just, oh yeah, I'm the, you just go for it. You know.
I'm just trying to think if there's anything that like I don't tell people upon meeting them. It just sort of like, oh, I just share everything. But about me as an individual,
Yeah,
um
as a person,
as a person.
because we're not just cogs in a machine. We're
Oh
people.
god.
I'm really trying to make that the. I
The
want that to be the
slogan.
tagline for this podcast. I think it's like that edge of like kind of too like corny, but like just right, where it's like kind of ironically serious. I don't know.
I kind of love it. I feel like you'd need like it in like vaporwave text with the whole like aesthetic, and
Yeah,
then you
yeah.
just.
I'll do that. Whenever it comes up, I'll have a little like cog in like a little cog like animation or something going.
God, one thing to know about me. Well, I mean, I'm really into creative stuff. I'm a bit of a, I'm a bit of a dork, actually, to be honest with you.
Yes, we
I
love
love,
dorks on this podcast.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we're all dorks, we work here, but I love,
Exactly.
I love video games. I really love computers. Not especially great at like using them, but like computer gaming and stuff like that. And I'm like a huge Nintendo fan, so I play a lot of Legend of Zelda and Switch, and I do a lot of painting as well, like watercolors, like graphic art and design, and I love things like fashion. But I'm someone where like I cultivate quite a lot of hobbies, and I really enjoy spending a lot of my spare time getting involved in things. I would definitely say I'm someone where like I don't I don't enjoy really just sitting still. I love having like lots of things on the go all the time, and meeting up with new people and going new places and getting started on new tasks. And obviously, in this sort of working environment, there's just so many things that you're doing all at once, working at Plant Simo and Pearl Lemon and everything. And I oh god, I was about to be like, I think it's somewhere where I thrive. Jesus
Yes,
Christ.
you thrive.
Thrive. But yeah, I mean, I'm a pretty ambitious person. Also, I'm I'd like to think, that I'm funnier than I come across initially, but I feel like that's giving myself too much credit. It's just
Yeah, I've been laughing a ton during this. You're a very funny person.
it's just pure clownery. We love it.
Yeah, especially because I asked for one thing and I just got a list of like 20 things about you,
I'm so
which
sorry. That's
no, this is perfect because I'm like getting ready to unpack all of this. Like I have so many questions and I'm hoping this doesn't turn into like a 3-hour thing because I just learned so many things about you that I'm like, I want to know more now. So
okay.
let's rewind first. Let's go check the tape.
Okay.
So one of the first things you said was video games.
Yeah.
You said, Legend of Zelda, Nintendo. I think that's really cool. So what are some of your favorite games? Like, tell me more about your gaming persona.
Oh my gaming persona,
Yeah,
who I am in the virtual sphere.
exactly.
Um, God, I've always loved Nintendo since I was like very young. I'm really, really close to my younger brother. He's 2 years younger than me. So basically, we grew up playing all these video
Yeah.
games, and when the Wii came out, we were like crazy about it. We were so excited, and yeah, it's just for me, it's a huge nostalgia thing. It's something that brings me a lot of like comfort and peace, and I think the games are so innovative and creative, and Legend of Zelda is probably my favorite of the Nintendo series,
Okay.
just in general. I quite like Kirby as well, but I mean, it's a lesser tier
Yeah, yeah.
franchise in
It's
my
like
opinion.
Zelda, Kirby's right there. What about Pokemon? Were you a big Pokemon?
I like Pokemon. I
Yeah,
like,
okay. I played those games so much, like, cause yeah, my brother is also about 2.5 years younger than me, and
yeah.
yeah, we grew up playing. We had the Game Boys and then the DS when they came out, playing all sorts of games, like, but Pokemon and Mario Kart, like, those were the two big ones that we
Oh
played a
yeah, I
lot.
love them. Have you played any of the like recent ones on the Switch or like?
No, I
Or like you've gone
well,
past this.
no. Here's the thing. I haven't really grown, but neither has my wallet. So it's like I want to buy a Switch, But at this time in my life, being in college, I just
Mm.
can't justify buying one. You know what I'm saying? Like I can't like I'm gonna go spend like $300 on this to distract myself from doing homework. I just so
No, I get what you mean. It is like it's a lot of money to invest in one. But like if anyone's watching and they're thinking, should I get a Switch? And if you have the money and time, I definitely recommend it because they're great.
yeah.
But I also really enjoy horror games. I really like the Resident Evil
Oh, that's a
franchise.
big
Yeah,
change right there. Okay.
and I'm really into strategy games as well. Like I quite enjoy like sort of world building strategy games online and stuff like that. I used to play Overwatch for quite a bit. I wasn't especially good, but I was a huge fan of it, and that was really my first foray into like, you know, online gaming with other people, you
Yeah.
know, like from across the world. I say that like I've been alone in a room just playing games my whole life, like with other people. But
You're
yeah,
actually a
you get that.
streamer, hardcore Twitch
Yeah.
Twitch streamer.
Yeah, exactly.
What about let's see.
Mm,
I've heard of those games. I'm a gamer, but I'm like I have a very like niche, if you will. Not niche, that's not the right word, but like I don't very much in my video games from it's usually sports or Star Wars. That's pretty much what I stick to in terms of video games. It's like I'm either playing Madden football or like NHL, like which is hockey. For you Londoners who might not know what the NHL is, you guys are all the way on the other side of the pond, as you say. But and also just Star Wars. Like anytime there's a Star Wars video game, I get it. Because I just love Star Wars. And
yeah.
because there's even the more recent one came out a few years ago. It was like called Battlefront 2, and it's essentially Call of Duty,
Mm,
but with like Star Wars themed. And I never played Call of Duty growing up. Like I played at friends like a couple of times. So I'm like, the only reason I like it is because it's Star Wars. I'm like, man, like I go online and I just get destroyed by everyone because everyone just like spends hours playing like Call of Duty and stuff. And I'm just like, I just don't even go with the online. I'm just like, oh, cool, I'm a stormtrooper. This is sick. Like, or now I'm a Jedi. This is awesome. But um, yeah, in terms of that's really where my focus is Star Wars and sports.
yeah, I've heard before of your love for Star Wars, and I think that's really cool. I know I've played some Star Wars games on the Wii where like you use the remote as like your lightsaber. I can't
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
remember the specific name of the games. I just remember distinctly being like a child and like trying to like fight Count Dooku and literally spending days attempting to beat him and just not having it happen. But yeah, I mean,
He's a
Star
tough
Wars is
one.
a massive one.
He's a really powerful Sith Lord, so it's
Mm.
like he's hard to beat. I don't blame you for not being able to. Like not everyone is as master of a Jedi as myself who could take on someone like Count Dooku.
On that note, actually, I'm really curious because obviously there's been quite a lot of controversy about the new Star Wars films. Like, what's your opinion? Do you like them?
I love them. Yeah, they're definitely. I mean, you know, the original trilogy is always going to be the greatest.
Yeah, yeah.
In terms of just yeah, the quality of the movie and all that, and like the new ones, like they're definitely things I disagree with in terms of like creative choices with what they did.
Mm,
Uh, and pretty much all three that came out, at least the trilogy one. But the way I look at it is, it's like I was every time I watched it, I was entertained. Every time I rewatch them because I've seen them all like 5 times since they came out. I'm entertained. I'm
mm.
just a person who just loves Star Wars, so just seeing it on the big screen and just the fact that they're still creating things like I just love. And there are some like great moments. There are some great storylines. Like I think without getting too nerdy here, in The Last Jedi,
Don't worry about it. We love it, honestly. Go ahead.
uh, um, in The Last Jedi with which was like episode 8, came out. That was like a really controversial one because there's a new director and it was just everyone's like, this doesn't feel like Star Wars at all. And I'm
Mm,
like, that was almost like a good thing because it changed things up. And like a lot of people complained that Luke Skywalker, he wasn't this like the great hero everyone thought he was. But it's like, yeah, you got to see him be vulnerable. You got to see
mm.
him struggle and realize that not everyone's perfect. And even like the mighty Luke Skywalker struggles, but then you see him overcome that and then move like teach this you know, Ray, like his not apprentice, but like the protege, whatever. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I just thought that was really cool. And there are some things about that movie I didn't like, um, but I was just one who's like, I just love Star Wars. So whenever there's a new movie, I just love it. And people like to. It's weird because they complain about. I have friends who complain about when Force Awakens came out. They're like, oh, it's too similar. It's too like fan service, too much like Episode 4. And then Episode 8
Mm.
comes out, and they're like, oh, that wasn't Star Wars. It didn't feel like Star Wars. I'm like, well, what do you want? You know, like tell me, like
Yeah.
so it's like I just love Star Wars, so I love them. Is the short answer.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, how do you capture the kind of like nostalgia for the original trilogy? Because that's a huge part of what's drawing people in to
Yeah.
watch films, right? While also making something entirely new. And I think getting the balance of that is like extremely hard, and you're never going to please everyone, you know? I still
Yeah.
think, you know, there are some areas where I like God, what is his name again? You know, in the final of the most recent trilogy, like the big
Yeah.
bad who
Palpatine?
yeah, I Palpatine, yes. I don't know about that whole kind of plot twist and whether it felt organic to me, but on the whole, I think they are like brilliantly executed films with some really cool new creative ideas, and like naturally the visuals are amazing.
Yeah.
I sound like I'm doing like a review here for fucking like some magazine or something. But
This
yeah,
is actually a film podcast for those who didn't know. We transitioned into our Star Wars review,
yeah, we just keep changing the podcast every 5 minutes.
pretty much.
Like 5 minutes ago, it was like Rachel's life and hobbies. Now we're like Star
Yeah, you
Wars.
somehow deflected me like into where I was gonna add so many more questions about you, and then you just said Star Wars a little bit, and then all of a sudden I'm just like, actually I brought it up first, of course, and then you just pushed that, and then next thing you know,
It's like
we're
podcast like jujitsu, or I'm like,
yeah,
these questions.
yeah. Now you're controlling it. Like now it's like you're the host. You like took over from me.
It's like a parasite. I've just wormed my way in. Like,
Yeah, and it's
yeah,
like hard
but
because I'm like I'm
oh,
trying. I
sorry,
should feel
go
like I should get
ahead.
back on topic, but I'm like I like it's hard to resist because I want to keep talking about Star Wars.
Mm.
I think I cut. Were you about to say something? I think I cut you off a little bit.
No, I was actually going to say still about Star Wars. Something that I
Yes.
find a really interesting fact is, you know, Harrison Ford hated
Yes.
the character. Yeah, of course you do. Of
Oh
course
no,
you
who
do.
he is. I didn't hear the rest you were gonna say. I said, yeah, I know Harrison Ford.
Yeah. Well, that he hated the character of like Han Solo.
Did he really? I didn't. I knew he's had like he had creative differences in some things, but I don't think I never read that he hated the character Han Solo. That's
To be
interesting.
fair, maybe hate is a bit of an exaggeration. It's not like I'm his mate and we've been down the pub and
Yeah.
he's been like, Rach, I hate this character. I'd be like, thanks, Harrison, you know,
I
like
know one thing, and maybe this is where that came from. I know in episode 5, so he was, frozen in carbonite. He actually wanted the character, I think in episode 5 he wanted to happen. This is Harrison Ford. He wanted
yeah,
Han Solo to actually die in episode 5. And I know that at least it didn't stem from him hating it. It was because he felt like it would add more emotional weight and make more sense for the story, make the story better if he died, and give I don't know if that would make more stakes for the next one, but I know he wanted the character to be killed off.
yeah.
And that one, I know he didn't really want to do the new trilogy. I think originally, like he at first he didn't want to, and I don't know what point he agreed. But I think one of his conditions was like, yeah, all right, we're getting him out of here. That was my
Yeah.
my biggest complaint about the newest trilogy that came out.
Mm,
Uh, and I get that part of it got messed up when Carrie Fisher like she sadly passed away before
yeah.
they could film the last episode, which was I was so sad about that, as I'm sure everyone was. But my thought was like I think that there should have been at least one moment where Luke, Han, Leia, and Chewie were all together, and that just didn't happen. And I think that should have been planned in somehow. And I don't, you want it to be a new story and be more focused on these new characters, not get too caught up in nostalgia. So it's like I didn't need a whole episode or a whole movie about that, but I think there should have been
Yeah.
at least one moment because Luke and Han didn't even get a chance to be together. Like
Yeah,
Leia did with
exactly.
Luke and then with Han, but like I just feel like that was a mistake, not getting to see have them have some kind of like goodbye or anything like that. It was just maybe it would have been corny, but I as a fan just wanted to see that so bad and unfortunately didn't get to.
Oh, that, first of all, that makes me incredibly sad to hear, and I'm just like, you should have given him that moment.
Yeah, why weren't
Why
they
did you
thinking
do
about me?
it? um, but yeah, I get what you mean. I mean, for a whole trilogy of films where like the driving fuel is nostalgia, right? You
Yeah,
know, and everyone in the cinema when Harrison Ford came back as Han Solo was like, "Oh my God, it's Harrison Ford! It's Han Solo." Do you get what I mean? And you
yeah,
don't get that kind of moment of everyone reuniting that kind of acknowledges the characters and their relationships from the original sort of trilogy and beyond that, the kind of yeah, I totally get what you mean. It feels like a missed opportunity. It, I mean, I feel like if they did that, there is the worry it could become kind of like you know that moment in Infinity War where like
yeah.
um they have like basically all the female superheroes attack at like the same
Yeah.
time. Like, these are women. Like, they basically line them up and they're like women superheroes, and then they all like attack. I kind of like, I get the intention of it, but it can so easily seem corny, you
Yeah.
know? But yeah, I do agree with you. I think they should have had that moment and handled it in the right way. So
Yes, because yeah, I agree. Because I'm not asking for a big like, oh, let's have a big group hug. Like I haven't seen you guys in like a decade. It just because I think the moments where they were together, when Han and Leia saw each other for the first time, I feel like that actually they did a good job of kind of capturing the relationship where it's like they're not the most like, especially because at that point they're kind of separated. The affectionate,
yeah.
just like oh, it's just kind of like making little jokes about changing your hair and stuff like that. Like I feel like they handled that well. Yeah, and then when Luke and Leia had that little brief reuniting, like again there, I thought it was simple. It wasn't anything crazy. Showed their relationship. It didn't have to be this. Oh, we're together again. Just thing. Just a simple. Yeah, I think they could have handled it for sure. And honestly, I would have taken a corny meeting with them over none at all. If I'm being honest, like I would,
Mm.
you know what I'm saying? I'd
Yeah.
rather have it be. It was a little corny, but at least I got to see them on a screen together at the same time, one last time.
Even if like they all met up, the like main theme played and like Yoda's ghost like floated
Yeah,
into the scene. Yeah, I mean, I completely get that, especially someone who's like clearly as passionate about the series as you are. I may even call you a Star Wars super fan. So yeah, I
I
think
would.
you
I
should
would.
have been given that.
I would call myself that.
Yeah. So like,
Um,
are you? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, you go, you go.
Oh God.
I'm the host, so
um,
you go.
No, you go. So like, are you really into the whole lore, like the behind the scenes and everything, or is it more just the kind of the creativity of the actual series? Like, how did you get into it? Did you watch the films growing up a lot, or like?
Yeah, so I was first introduced. My dad. I watched with my dad for the first time. Uh, it's funny. I remember. So before I even knew what Star Wars was, this was I think 2007 when Episode 3 came out. So the prequel trilogy. So at that time it was the new trilogy.
Yeah.
So I didn't even know what it was, and I remember my mom bought the DVD for Episode 3. And I'm like, oh, this is sick. Let's watch. My dad's like, no, you gotta start with episode 4. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? This doesn't make any sense. Like, why would we start here? And he's just like, you got it. And then I watched it, and of course now I'm like a hard believer, and you start with episode 4. But yeah, that's why I watched the original trilogy, and then watched the prequel trilogy after just getting the DVDs, and that was the ones that I loved as a kid because as a kid I don't care about dialogue or
Yeah,
plot
yeah.
development, and while I loved all of them, it just seeing, especially in episode 2, just all the Jedi come in with the clones and all that was just visually so cool. And at the time, of course, the CGI looked great to me.
Yeah.
And just seeing that, this is sick. And so my friends, we bought lightsabers, so we'd play Star Wars all the time. So that's how I got into it as a kid, just watching the movies first with my dad, and then like getting into the toys and like playing with my friends. Then I think once I got to more middle school, high school, I probably wasn't as not that I wasn't as into. It wasn't as big like in my head because they weren't making new ones. It was kind of just there. And then I
Yeah.
think when the new one came out, Force Awakens, I kind of was like, oh my god, Star Wars again. Then I got super into it, and then I started. I when you say lore, I mean there's a lot. Of course, there's obviously a lot of comics, books,
Oh
video
yeah.
games, and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And there's that timeline. So once Disney bought Star Wars, everything before that was called Legends. So it's like not officially part of the universe. And then everything after, now that Disney's publishing it, is canon. So I didn't get into it, the books before. So like the terms of lore, like I know about it because I read articles and because I'm a nerd. And so I know about these characters and what happens, but I never really read those books. But now
Mm.
I have so many Star Wars books now. Like I got super into them because there's a lot that tie into the movies. So I have a stack of 20 of the canon Disney books and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I watch the documentaries. There's one from I think 10 years ago with focus on George Lucas and how he created it, and there's a couple behind the scenes ones of Rise of Skywalker. So yeah, I don't just watch the movies. I go all in. Like the TV show Mandalorian, Clone Wars,
Oh, I
even
love
Rebels.
Mandalorian. Yeah.
Mandalorian's so good.
You
Even
just. Oh.
I was gonna say I'll admit this. Clone Wars was coming out when I was a kid, so I was really into that in Cartoon Network. So I watched that. But Rebels was coming out by the time I was in high school,
Mm.
and it was on Disney, and it was more of a kid. It's a little bit more kids oriented. So I didn't watch it when it was coming out. But this summer, some of my friends had seen it. They said it's really good, so I went and checked it out, and like it is so good. And of course, there's a few episodes that are just very kid oriented. I'm like, okay, kind of dorky, but I get what they're doing. But I'm not gonna like, in case anyone decides to watch after this, I won't spoil it. But I'm not even kidding. I cried. One of the episodes
Oh
made
my
me not
god.
just like sad. No, I tears. All right, throughout the day, I would think about it and I would start crying again. I'm not kidding.
Like the amount of curiosity I have right now as to what was so powerful about this like cartoon episode that
Oh
made you
my god.
cry.
I don't want to be the guy who spoils this. So like off air, after this, if we want to talk about it, I can tell you. But if you don't, but it was just, oh my god, tears.
Oh, that's literally crazy, and it just shows how like that relationship with your dad and everything, and like there's literally so much in terms of like the lore behind these franchises, and it's a huge part of why they're so popular and so beloved, right? Because there's so
Yeah.
many ways you can enjoy them and like explore them and everything, and it makes me think of all these other huge franchises that people don't just like them because they're popular. I hate this idea that like, oh, people only like this because it's big and popular. No, like people like it because it's really fucking good.
Yeah. No, I
And like,
agree.
there's so much world building, and it's like things like Lord of the Rings. Literally, all the world building behind that is like insane. The amount of like maps and like character backstories and like the backstories of like whole entire races and stuff like that. It's just absolutely crazy. And hearing that, I think I will check out some of the Star Wars comics, because that's something I haven't explored at all about the whole like franchise. I mean, I've had like figures because of course I did, like
Yeah.
dorky kid. I used to like play with like Star Wars figures growing up and stuff like that, and I had a
Oh, same.
lightsaber. Yeah, yeah. And it's just it's a key part of growing up, and I know
Yeah.
my dad has definitely introduced me as well to a lot of the stuff that like I really love today. So that's really sweet hearing about that.
Yeah. And that's like one of the cool things about it too is that it's always had a bit of a kids focus. Like George Lucas was always, it's for adults too, but it had it geared towards kids, which is a little weird when you have episode one, which starts off with this whole massive trade disagreement, which is kind of like, okay, I'm an adult and I don't even get why there's a trade blockade. But that aside,
Mm.
um, there is that, yeah, geared towards kids. And, like I was saying, and like you were saying, there's just aspects that we remember with a kid with our dads and toys, whatever. And what's just so cool is just how spread out it is over 42 years. There's something for everyone. They have like I think Dave Filoni, who's a big producer with like the Clone Wars and very up there in Lucasfilm, he kind of says there's the original trilogy kids, who people who saw that when they were a kid, then the prequel kids, kind of like the Clone Wars kids, the sequel trilogy ones, and like Rebels. So it's like each generation has their uh, like their version of Star Wars and what it was coming out and like what got them
Yeah.
attached to it. And I was definitely more that like kind of late prequels, but definitely Clone Wars. That was the Clone Wars was coming out when I was a big Star Wars fan, so like that's where a lot of it comes from. And then yeah, kids now seeing these sequel trilogies, and there's just so many plans further. There's the Mandalorian coming out. There's also Obi-Wan show, all this stuff. So it's just there's almost something for every generation of kids, which I think is just so cool.
Yeah, yeah, it's it's amazing, and that's got me thinking. This should be the new way we identify generations.
Yes.
I forget like boomer, millennial, all this shit. Like,
No, I'm a Clone Wars.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. And God, I mean, just thinking about The Mandalorian now, I've watched like I'm pretty up to date on all the episodes and stuff, and I just I love it. I definitely think there are some episodes which aren't as strong as like the first few episodes I thought were like amazing, like literally
Yeah.
fantastic. And also I really, really love the music and the whole vibe of it. It really captures the whole like, space western thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you should watch. There's on Disney Plus. There's I don't know if you watched it. There's an 8 part series of documentary about the making of season one of The Mandalorian.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
because John Favreau, he was kind of the producer and writer, and Dave Filoni a big part of it. But they kind of each episode there's a little different theme, and I'd recommend watching all 8 of them, of course, because they're all really cool. And just even if you have no interest in Star Wars, if you have any interest at all in movies or film, like there's just a lot of advancement in technology with what's going on there, which is really cool. But there is an episode about the creating of the music, and that
Ooh.
one was one of my favorites because they had this one dude who he was talking about his process of just he would went in studio for a month and try all these different sounds, and when he plays on a simple recorder the main theme, it's just like, whoa, that's what it is. It's just so simple, but kind of
Mm.
yeah, just it captures that little like Western but still Star Wars you should watch it for sure. Definitely that episode, but or all of them.
Yeah, that yeah, that sounds really cool. I mean, just getting to actually see like behind the scenes and the whole music production aspect of it. Because obviously, when you watch it and you listen to it, you could not imagine any other melody or sound, or instruments being used to produce what they do. But the whole process of getting to the point where they're like, right, this is the melody, that must take a lot of time and like creative energy. And that gets me thinking about something else I'm also really passionate about. I'm a huge fan of all of the Studio Ghibli films. And one of my favorite things about all of them is the music, because it is literally incredible, honestly. Like some of the best music you'll listen to in films, like it's so beautifully like orchestrated and written, and captures all the moments so well. I just think it's amazing. But
What
have
what
you
films
have
are
you
these? I
watched
can't
any?
say I've. What films are these? I can't say I've seen
Oh,
them. What
Studio Ghibli?
is that? The director? Who is that? Or is
Oh
that
no.
you don't
Oh
know?
god. They're like animated films. Have you ever heard of Spirited Away, Howl's Moving
Oh
Castle?
yeah, I have
Yeah,
heard of those.
yeah.
I think I've seen
Yeah,
Spirited Away. Okay, I got you
that's
now.
amazing. But like Hayao Miyazaki is the director of most of them. I mean, he's retired now, but he directed all like the classics, that people love and think about. Like especially over here, like in the UK and in like America, like Princess Mononoke and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, Spirited Away is definitely one of my favorite films. And I think the kind of like the whole story and the kind of appeal to children, but still having themes that kind of, suit adults. It shares a lot of elements with Star Wars in that way, in my opinion, the film. So that's
Yeah,
cool. Yeah.
cool. So we've talked about Star Wars for probably 20 minutes now, so we should probably get back to something else. Um, so before we're kind of running out of time though, so is there anything? So what else did you talk about? You said you did video games, and then we got into Star Wars Forever. Painting. You said painting. You are you a good artist? Tell me about your painting.
God, I mean, sitting here saying I am a good artist, it might be a bit, but I am a huge fan of art. I've been painting and creating like portraiture, and I do a lot of kind of surreal artworks. I'm a huge fan of like surrealism in general, not surrealism, but also like artistic surrealism. Rene Magritte is one of my favorite artists, and I've done quite a lot of pieces that kind of mimic a lot of his stuff. And I mainly work in watercolors, detailed like line pencil drawings and stuff like that. And I used to do this thing where for my friends, whenever it was their birthday, I'd always like draw like a photo of them.
Aw,
Yeah, and then give
that's so
it.
sweet.
Yeah. Well, it just, it's something personal. I think people appreciate that kind of sentimentality, more than like, I don't know, like what, some makeup. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Because it's something you can always look back on and be like, oh, this person drew this for me, even though it doesn't look anything like me.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
100%. That's so sweet. You're gonna have to send me some pictures of some of your artwork, and maybe even I will put in the description of the episode so people can see if she really is a good artist or not. Because right now, people can't see anything; they're just hearing you say, "I'm this great artist who
Oh,
does
God.
surreal work for their friends." So we're gonna need some proof.
This is I'm just like I'm in danger now. About to expose myself again. You've already done it with my diet and the whole vegan thing, and now you're doing it with me and art, honestly.
I'm gonna
Um
be the meat one was on me. I brought that up. That was on me, but I made the claim. I'm the good artist here, so this is on you.
It's 100% on me, honestly.
Yes.
I deserve to be roasted and exposed. But yeah, I love art. I find it really therapeutic and relaxing. I'm really into sci-fi, fantasy, stuff like that. So growing up, I've done a lot of things like character illustration and stuff like that. And yeah, yeah, I like dorky things like that. Do you like art, Noah?
Do I like art?
Yeah.
I like art. Um, no, it's I'm afraid to say things because I don't want to make this claim too. I in high school, like all 4 years, like I took art classes, and I'd like to say I'm okay. I can. You look at things I've done, and it's like you're not thinking he's the next Monet. It's not, whoa, holy crap. It's, oh, okay, he knows how to draw. He can handle a pencil. He can
Mm.
handle paint. It's not going to go in a museum, but it's not, you don't look at it, it's like, wow, he's a terrible drawer. So I would say I'm good. And just in terms of interest in art, I have I'm not like crazy looking up art all the time, but I do have some interest. I took some classes in college last year, and one of them was about, I thought it was really cool, how the use of art, not just to look cool, but to have an actual, more as a language, art as a language, and to communicate something and have a message and a purpose, whether it's something crazy, some, super critical thing of our government, or just a simple, just expressing this emotion of how you're feeling. So that, I thought that was really cool because it changed the way I look at art, and not just, oh, it looks realistic, but to what is it? This sounds so pretentious. Like, what is it saying? What does this mean? But you know what I'm saying? Is like, is it more
Yeah.
than just a picture that looks realistic of this king standing there,
Yeah, I totally get what you mean, and that's something that is so interesting and so debatable in the whole kind of art world, because I know I completely get people's gripe with these abstract works of art that you'll see in museums and stuff like that, right? And it will
Yeah.
be a red square and that's art. Do you get what I mean? Because
Yeah.
anyone could just create it with a bit of paint and then put it up there. But obviously, the point of that, in a sense, is questioning, what is art?
Yeah.
What do we classify it as? Why do we think of certain things as being more art than other things and stuff like that? And I think the whole transition our culture has had from like you were talking about like where hyper realism is the thing that was prized primarily in terms of art, replicating reality as if it was like a photograph.
Yeah.
Oh my god, it sounds so like but yeah, into more like abstract kind of stuff and more like creative things. And yeah, I just love seeing people's different styles. So, I'm gonna turn it back around to you now. You will have to show me some of your art as well. And I'm sure you're better than you say. I bet you're one of those people where you're just really modest and it's actually like fucking fantastic. And you're like, oh, this is terrible.
I hope that's true. What we should do is figure out how to make some kind of a poll. We can put like each pick our best piece of art, and then like put up in the link description, and then have people say who's the better artist of the two.
Oh my god.
Um, but what's funny though is since I've graduated high school, I've, just for fun kind of drew some stuff.
Mm.
But my best work in terms of aesthetics probably came from high school, and I'm gonna sound like such a hypocrite because I literally just copied a photograph because I didn't know any better in senior high school, but now I know all this. Oh, it's not just copying a photograph; it's about what coming up with something original. So I'm gonna see my best work. It's gonna make me look like such a hypocrite. But I will say though that for one of my essays in that class, the prompt was find a piece of art that offends you and defend its existence. So I picked kind of like how you're saying how some are just a red square, whatever. I picked this
Mm.
artist. His name is Cy Twombly. It's first name like CY, last name's like TWOMBLY, just in case anyone wants to look it up to get that visual. But he's one of the people who a lot of people complain about because it looks like just scribbles and words and just not an actual image,
Yeah.
or what people think of as an image, which is a whole other discussion. um, so I was like, this is offends me because I kind of went on, this is kind of like that was the kind of the voice and the style. This is a piece of crap, although I use some other more harsh language. And how it's like, why is this in the, because there's the Philadelphia Museum of Modern Art, which is 2 miles from me. It's like, why is this in this museum, this famous museum, when anyone can do that? It's a kindergartner can scribble it. And then I had my piece, which looked aesthetically better because it looked more like more realistic people and stuff.
Yeah.
But I kind of defended in it, saying, well, yeah, but his is a language. His is actually, if you decode it, it actually is telling this story, and it's an interpretation of uh, the Odyssey, I believe it was. I can double check on that if anyone really cares. But it's like his is actually communicating something and saying something. I'm like, well, mine's just a copy of this photograph. So I know full well that I'm kind of a hypocrite, at least in my artwork, but
Nah, like
it looks pretty damn good. So
it takes like literally it takes so much skill to create any piece of art. You know what I mean? Just because the like image is right there, like in front of you, right? It doesn't mean you're not creating the lines and the form and actually what makes it good. It's the
yeah,
same as someone who like, they paint someone for a portrait. Like technically, the person's there in front of them. They haven't
yeah,
created something off the top of their head, but they are the one who's translated it translated it into paint, into
yeah.
pen or whatever, into penmanship.
Which is true. And it's not to
Yeah.
say there isn't any, it's not to say there isn't any value in hyperrealism. And because one, there is that kind of emotional reaction of like, wow, this is really cool.
Yeah.
that somebody can do this. But it's just, I personally like now art better that is more than that. And that's a good tool. Like, oh yeah, use this hyper realism, but use it to say something. Don't just take a
Yeah.
picture of this fruit and then repaint it. I personally enjoy art that adds something to that. But that isn't to say, I mean, art really is whatever people determine it to be. So if people are willing to pay millions of dollars for something that is just realistic and but doesn't say anything, then it's art. And people are, I mean, that's a whole other discussion, but like that's what people are willing to pay for at least. So power to those who can draw hyper realistically. I just think other people's art are better.
Yeah, I definitely get what you mean. That makes me think a lot about Pollock. His works
Yeah.
of art was basically just splatters of paint. And obviously, he is one of the most influential artists in the Western world, of, the modern sort of centuries and stuff like that. So, yeah, that whole kind of debate of like, what is art? What is valuable art? What do people like to look at? It is just enjoying looking at something. Does that make it art? I would say probably yes. Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting questions to explore, and I feel like now we have to set up another podcast, which is
It's
just us
actually
discussing art.
it's actually funny that you say that because I've had a lot of discussions about art with my friends, and some of my friends were doing that thing that all friends do, where we're trying to start our own podcast because
Yeah.
we're trying to be original, right? And we've gone through different forms, and one of them was doing debate, not debate, but like trying to answer these questions. And one of them was what is art. So I've had done like 2 1-hour each like conversations with friends about art, or more than that too, because we texted about it. So I've talked about what is art so much with people, and even coincidentally in podcast form. So I'm ready whenever you want to go at it and figure out what is art on a podcast. I'm prepared beyond belief.
Honestly, I feel kind of intimidated now. I'm like, he's got all this experience. He's been literally prepping for this moment
Yeah,
for
you don't
like,
even know. I planned
I
this
don't
actually.
know.
I'm like, D, I want to start a podcast just so I can get someone on and angle it so that way we end up talking about art so I can just school them. Like that's what I've been working on this past 2 months.
Yeah, honestly, I'd love to do that, whatever. As you can probably tell, I love talking,
Yeah.
especially about things like art and anything sort of like creative or like intellectual or anything. So yeah, I would totally love to do that. I am perfectly happy being on now. I think it's 4 podcasts are gonna
Wow,
be
look at
running.
you.
So,
That's 3 more than me. This is only my first official one, really. So you're, what is that,
it's
300% more than me or something?
No, I mean, here's the thing though, right? You
Yeah.
have this very charismatic persona. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah, I know what you mean.
yeah, yeah. So, when you start yours, it's gonna be a bigger splash than mine because mine have basically been, it's been totally enjoyable, but I have been speaking with people who, in terms of their knowledge about the topics we're talking about, they're on a higher tier than me. So I was spending the whole podcast like, tell me your views. But yeah, exactly.
So what you're saying is that my podcast is gonna be better than your podcast, is what you're saying. You're pretty much
No.
admitting to that. Like,
Actually,
my
no,
podcast is the best podcast.
I was actually just being nice there. I was just being kind. Um,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I think my podcast is the best podcast that's ever been made, honestly. If I'm being real
Oh,
with you.
wow. Have I ever told you? I feel like we've had a lot of conversations, but I I really admire your modesty. I don't think I've ever told you that. Out of all your qualities, I think you are just so modest.
I know it's incredible, just the way I completely just yeah, the modesty.
Yeah,
Truly stunning.
it really just has the completion of the perfect person. Just with your modesty, it's just
Just this makes me think about when I said to you, like, oh, all the Americans I've met, they don't really understand sarcasm. Then like I work and I meet with you, and it's like the sarcasm is literally like dripping through the screen. It's incredible.
that's. I will say, I can't speak for all Americans, but a lot of the ones I know, we do know how to be sarcastic. But then we have some who just, sarcasm just goes completely over their head. So we have a good mix in America, and I just find that interesting that how the ones you've communicated with through whatever means just happen to all not understand sarcasm. That's kind of interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean it's like Midwesterners mostly, like
It's the
relatives. So
Midwest. They're
yeah,
they're a whole. I'm
they're
a
a different
Northeast guy.
breed.
I'm blew up in New York. I'm Northeast, so maybe it's them. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, maybe that's why. I mean, I feel like there's so many differences in terms of like, just Americans in the culture, like geographically, state from state, even like city to city. That obviously we over here like have no clue about, we don't even realize. But also, there's such such a misrepresentation of Britain, over in the US by so much of the media. It's either that like we all talk like the Queen, like, oh hello, would you like to come over for tea? Or like you're like a London chimney sweep, like, all right, governor, I'm heading up there now. Like those are the two like archetypes. And if you went to where I live, in Norfolk, and you met some of the like local people, and like who actually are from the area, like generations they've lived there, the accents are just so varied. It's kind of crazy, like in the UK. So
That's interesting because I was about to ask because U.S. especially how big it is,
mm,
uh, everyone talks differently based off where you are. Even some of it's subtle. Northeast to Midwest, it's not huge different, but there's subtle ones. I get made fun of a lot within the U.S. for the way I talk. For one thing, because there's like Southern accents is a big thing, and then
mm.
West everyone has different like dialects. There's Brooklyn, even within New York State, there's different. There's like the Brooklyn accent, like Manhattan, Long Island, and then just where I'm from, upstate. But people make fun of me so much, and I didn't realize this until college because I thought it was like there's this expression that we have. It's like, oh, like when it's tomato, like because I guess some people say tomato, some people say tomato,
Yeah.
in the U.S., which I found incredible because I never knew people said tomato, but whatever. But I thought this was one of those where there's differences, but people know. Apparently not. Apparently, people in upstate New York and in my area are the only people in the world who say this. We don't say elementary. Like for
Okay.
elementary school, I say elementary.
What?
Which, yeah, everyone reacts like that. When I first went to college in a different state, I said that and they're like, "What did you say?" And I'm like, they acted like I said I punt babies. Like I'm like,
Mm.
elementary. What do you mean elementary? And I'm like, yeah, it's the same thing. Then they go, no, it's not at all. Everybody I say that now like is dumbfounded. And as soon as I say it, I see the look on their face. I'm like, yeah, I say elementary. I know it's weird.
Though it just it just sounds to me like like an alien came to Earth and they've like disguised themselves as a human and they're trying to like blend in the college scenes. And they're like, yes, ele.
You, you do realize though that it's spelled Tary, not Tree. There's no elements in any trees that I know of. Okay, it's elementary. All right. I
Elementary.
just, yeah, that was one of those things that was a big shock when everyone just couldn't believe that I said that. And I thought it was just one of those differences that, because there's soda and pop or something like that. I thought it was one of
Yeah.
those, but no, it's just everyone thinks I'm a freak.
Though I mean, you have a really nice accent, honestly. I
Oh,
mean,
thank
I obviously I don't want to disparage anyone's accents, but I feel like there are there are definitely some from the US that are quite strong and like difficult to kind of discern what someone's saying when they speak in them, just from like personal experience. So yeah, it's kind of like I would call yours, I don't know, almost like newscaster kind of
Oh,
accent.
okay.
Yeah. I
All
mean,
right.
that's the thing that got me thinking, right? In the US, like, are there accents you would say, oh, this is a posh American accent? Because that's a huge thing over here, obviously, we all know what like a posh British accent sounds like. But is that really a thing in the US or
What do you mean by the word posh? What is that? Is that
like posh?
I don't even know what that word means.
Oh, really? Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's like really like upper class. Like when you say like
Oh,
yeah, like posh
okay.
over here, you'd think of people who go to Oxford University and they went to Eton. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
yeah.
Now I know what you mean. Well, honestly, our posh accent, like we people in America think English accents. Like
Oh,
they think that like there's studies that show that when people hear someone with an English accent, they think they're a lot smarter than they might actually be. Like they just hear it and it's just we associate that with in being intelligent for some reason. Uh
serving me well here. It's just it's the only way I've gotten through this so far. It's just
honestly,
that
it's
bias.
yeah. So in terms of posh in the US, there isn't one that's like, oh, if you have a New York sounding accent, you're high class. But I will say that I think Southern accents are usually a little more associated with lesser intelligence.
Mm.
And I don't want to say that because I don't want this to sound like I'm, mean or geographist or something. But I think that one is usually considered less. But I don't think there's one that's a high class that I can think of. I know one because you said this made me think of it when you said I have like a newscaster kind of a voice, which I never heard before anyone say about me. So I'm like, all right, cool. I think in the U.S., I think the Midwestern accent is what is usually go for national like TV anchors. Like that's what the accent they try to model off of it because it's the most neutral.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Where I mean, mine's pretty like level, but like you get into like Brooklyn, you kind of get like Long Island, they'll start talking like that, or like New Jersey
Yeah.
and stuff like that. I think Midwestern's what they go for. But yeah, in terms of a high class accent, off the top of my head, there isn't one that I'm aware of.
Yeah, that's so interesting because that's such a huge thing over here that, like we think of accents in terms of being associated with like the upper class or the working class. It just shows how like class stratified I think the UK is in a lot of ways. But I think with Southern accents, being associated with, lesser intelligence and stuff like that, you've got George Bush to thank for that. I mean, I'm not
Oh,
saying he's
jeez.
the only source, but it's
Yeah,
it's something I can
and
identify. Like,
I think we're definitely more accents are more of a geographical thing than a
yeah,
class thing. And I think part of it too. I would say if there is a class one, it might be more pronunciation. And I think in general in America, especially compared to England, we slur a lot of our words. Even I'm slur.
mm,
Even I've become more aware of this. Like I definitely, especially like R's and like T's. Like I think Trevor Noah did this, and that's what really made me aware of it. Uh,
yeah,
we say water, like there's a D, but you guys say water. Like you pronounce that T. It's like water.
yeah.
So I think that might almost be why we associate. I'm totally making this up, but like we
Mm.
associate English with more intelligence because you guys are much better at pronouncing the actual consonants and sounding it out where we kind of slur through everything and there's a lot of words we just kind of say as quick as possible, I guess.
No, it's
It's even
it's
right there when I said I guess. I'm not saying like I guess. It's I guess. Like I kind of almost skipped right over that G almost.
it's just getting through it faster, honestly, and it just sounds a lot more relaxed because I'm just very conscious. I have quite a posh sort of sounding voice, and wherever I go, it's just how I sound. And obviously, it affects how people, read what you say and how you come across and stuff like that. So yeah, it's very interesting. But you've got a nice accent, and the slur's almost nice to be honest. Because I think if you live over here and you watch any news channel, it's just constantly accents where like the diction and pronunciation is like so sort of rigid. Like there's no slurring whatsoever, and it's so sort of like posh that it almost gets like grating. There's a
Yeah.
very well defined caster kind of voiceover here, and it's like it's not as sort of neutral as I would say yours in the US. It's very associated with like like the upper class. Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, this was I don't even know how we got into accents. I don't remember where that, I don't even,
Yeah, I do.
I think we were
I
talking about
got,
painting.
yeah. And then Star Wars, and then
No, that was
just
before painting. Star Wars was well before that, I think.
well, basically,
Anyway,
what happened is you asked me about myself, and I was like, I'm not doing this. So
I
just
had to make it
hijacked
about
the whole thing.
accents.
Yeah.
Oh, was the sarcasm? I think because I was being sarcastic, and then you said how Americans aren't sarcastic, but
Oh, yeah.
then you asked the posh question, the posh question,
The walk question.
the posh, like the posh accents,
Oh,
or is
the
that the word?
posh.
Am I pronouncing it wrong?
No, you say it like posh,
Well,
like
I was trying to do a joke accent.
oh,
I
I
was trying to be like
get
posh, but I would
I'm
say
such an
posh,
idiot.
but
I was like, that's how he says it. The guy who says elementary. That
yeah,
is.
the guy who correctly pronounces that word. You guys don't even call it elementary school. Do you call it primary school, or what do you call like grades 1 through 5?
Primary school.
Okay.
Primary school, then it's secondary school, then it's high school, you know. But
Oh wait, secondary school isn't high school?
no, wait. Second, yes. Secondary school is high school. I'm an idiot. They're basically one and the same thing. They're interchangeable over here. So you have maybe nursery beforehand, then you have primary school, and then you go up to year 6, and then you have secondary school, high school, then you have college, which is like, 1 or 2 years where you get your A levels and stuff, and then you go off to uni, which is your college. So it's kind of confusing to
I was just
compare
say,
the two.
wait, yeah, because we use college and university interchangeably. Like I'm in college right now, but it's the University of Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
and so it's university and college are very interchangeable words for us.
Mm. Yeah, that's so funny. I
Yeah,
mean,
I will say I would like to compliment you though because when you said so, I say secondary, but that's
mm.
not we. Like we say secondary. Everyone says that. If you say secondary, at least you're consistent. People in America, like we're so inconsistent, it'll be like, no, it's elementary, but then they say military, not military. No one says military, it's military, even though it's the same spelling. And then they say documentary, and I say documentary because I'm weird. So that's
Mm.
weird. But then we say secondary, not secondary. We just can't make up our freaking minds with how to pronounce words. At
It's
least you're wrong, but at least you're consistently wrong.
wrong. Wow. The thing is, when you just have that much freedom, it just it falls into everything you do. Pronounce words however you want. It's the land of the
Yes,
free. And like
but
an eagle should like fly
free.
over like the
Yeah,
Yeah.
we don't need to get into freedom. Uh,
Yes.
I'll get arrested.
That's maybe for another day. I don't
Yeah,
know. Just hoping you guys are all safe right now over there. So
we're trying. Hope you guys are safe too with this crazy world we're in.
oh yeah.
So it's been about 73 minutes, so we've been going for quite a bit here. Before we go,
Wait, seriously? Oh my
yeah,
god.
yeah, we've been. You just, I was trying to get off like an hour ago, but you just keep talking.
I just kept talking.
I want to make this a 13-minute podcast, and you force this into an hour 13. Um, Before we
Excuse
go,
me, I'm not the person who went on a rant about Star Wars for about 45 minutes. I'm sorry.
you started it though. No, wait, I started it. Never mind.
Wow.
And meet the team. We like to end every podcast because this is the first one, so obviously this is everyone. Just asking, so you've been with Pearl Lemon for a little bit now, and or Plant Sumo. I say, what's your favorite thing been so far, and like, why would you recommend somebody come work for either Pearl Lemon or Plant Sumo?
Ooh, I promise. I promise I will keep it to one point this time, right? Because I'm
30
aware.
seconds, go.
Yeah. Oh my god. I would say definitely the working environment. And when I say that, I mean how supportive and understanding and kind of caring everyone is that you work with. You work with people from so many different backgrounds, people who are in school, people who have families, all these sorts of things who manage their lives on top of this job. And not even just through interacting with these people, but through doing the job itself, you gain so many valuable skills quickly. So so quickly. I'm sorry, we've been on this for so long. So
Yeah,
many
it's okay. Just keep going.
Stop.
Keep going. We won't
Okay,
even
okay. Okay, sorry.
won't
Back
give
into
an
the flow
excuse.
of things. So quickly. And basically you get to a point where like you've already accumulated so much more knowledge than you would really on a conventional schooling program in a lot of ways, especially when it comes to like technical skills, things surrounding SEO, how to write blog posts, how to do all these things, how to interact with people in a professional way. You get better at presenting and speaking to people through doing looms all the time.
So
So
many looms.
yeah, it's great. It's a really great environment, and you grow a lot as a person. And I can tell you, I've grown a lot as a person in confidence as well, especially through doing the podcasts. So yeah.
That is quite the pitch. Yeah. So if anyone's listening to this, I don't know how you wouldn't want to work with us. I mean, we're
Mm.
great. Rachel, thank you so much for joining me on this first ever episode of Pearl Lemon Meet the
Ooh,
Team.
amazing.
Again, this has been Rachel Brown. She is the head of content and the podcast host for Plant Sumo. Look her up on LinkedIn. We'll also have a link in the description. Also, check out her artwork. I'm sure we'll get that up there too. And definitely listen to her podcast because, according to her, it's the greatest podcast of all time.
Yes.
Thanks for joining,
Oh.
everyone.